and you have 12. Well, there's 120 bucks just in that. The raw bones, there are places that buy that. So you have to look in that stuff. I always keep the skulls. I have a stockpile of skulls. I think I've sold a few in the past. It's more work, but you get more out of an animal. So an animal that might, the fur might only get you a little bit. Well, the rest of it might get you more. And then, of course, the stuff you can eat. So that, you know, cuts down on the grocery bill, right? My case, my dad would never eat anything I dragged off the trap line, right? You know, it's different when, you know, money's hard and tight for, you know, for you. Then you consider these things. But when it's not, it's like, no way, I'm gonna leave that thing in the bush. You know what I mean? Give that back to nature. So a lot of people are still in that, like they're still comfortable. So, you know, it's not arrogance or whatever and like that. It's just, you know, they're comfortable. They could still go to the supermarket. But if those supermarkets prices start getting really high, people like me, okay, we're not going to get our money's worth out by an hourly wage out of this. But if we could put 52 beavers in the freezer, we got meat all year round, right? If you get 12, you get at least one beaver a month, and maybe whatever. And if you're lucky, you get a moose and a deer, whatever. But fur bearing for $31 license, you could basically eliminate your meat bill. You know what I mean? If you're willing to take the, well, I'm not going to say the meat's downgraded. In fact, stuff like beaver is really good eating. It's just, and most of it is just getting over the idea of it. Now the candids, like your canines and stuff, like, you wouldn't eat those just for safety reasons. Raccoons, I don't recommend it. You can eat it, but it's a lot of work. I mean, if you think skinning them is a lot of work, just cooking them, you got to boil them like 3 times because they're so fatty and so greasy. But it's all the parasites and the diseases, those type of animals. There's certain animals that are really not safe to eat. They're a bit of a gamble. If you had to do it to stay alive, sure. Rabbit, you would starve to death if you just solely lived on rabbit. That's what happened to, they call it a starvation diet. That's why if you want to lose weight, eat rabbit. But anyway, the fur prices. Well, the fur prices are quite horrible right now. I mean, it's kind of weird because when you lop the United States in with the Canadian prices, it really drops the prices bad. But when I looked at just Canadian prices, like, you know, these are furs sold in Canadian dollars, where, you know, at auction, right? And our furs tend to fetch a bit more because we, you know, got slightly colder, thicker furs. But it's not always the case. Like, for example, the Western coyotes have a softer pelt and tend to fetch much more money than ours, because ours are, you know, it's like they're covered in barbed wire. You know what I mean? Like they're just a really coarse animal. Stuff like that. I'll get into the price. Well, you can go to the fur harvesters auction to look at the prices, and their cover, I read the cover letter last night, and it was like, you know, it didn't sound, it was a bit of a depressing letter from the company. And there's another fur harvesters, or fur auction, NAFA, North American fur auction. They just went under, which has a lot of people in the fur community going, what do I do now? You know, fur harvesters auction is still up and running. The difference between the two is, the way I understand it, is NAFA basically took a lot of gamble on supporting mink ranchers, and probably fox, I would imagine. And the mink ranchers and the fox ranchers are losing money like left, right, and center. They're just not making money at it. Which you would say, okay, the mink ranchers and the fox ranchers basically wipe out the wild fur of mink, and you know, like, you almost get nothing for a wild mink. I mean, because the ranchers, you know, the minks that they're sending in are just, every pelt is just absolutely controlled and primed and perfect, right? So you can't really compete with that. Although you'll get a couple of bucks for a mink, whatever. But that's the point. All the work you're going to put in, you're only going to get a couple of bucks for just about anything, with the exceptions of some animals. Now, if you look at the average price is always low. Don't hold yourself to that price. Expect that price. as your baseline. But there's a lot of things to consider. Like, there's a lot of people, you know, you'll see the guy who skins the beaver in 52 seconds. That beaver pelt, I bet you's got like 100 cuts in it. You know what I mean? So he's not gonna get, he's gonna get like $4 for that pelt. A guy like me who takes a couple hours per pelt, try not to put any holes in them, although it does happen. We don't want to talk about that, but it does happen. At the end of the day, yeah, I'm gonna get more money because I take more time, but more time means, you know, like, again, if you're one of those people that need an hourly wage, this is not the job for you. Although it can pay big dividends when you get, you know, that money coming back. The other problem is the demand for different animals. Right now, like beaver, the big demand is, and it's not a big demand, but it's the only kind of the main demand is for, like, they take the fur, they cut it up into little tiny little chunks, and then what they do is they make like a velvet out of it, and they do the cowboy hats with it. And other than that, nobody really wants to work on the beavers as much, because it's a lot cheaper to make a mink coat than it is, you know, it's easier to work with, all that stuff, than it is to deal with big bad beavers, right? So anyway, I'm going to drop off my snares. I got a snare there. Now, I don't know how I'm going to do this without snaring myself even worse. I cannot just put this in any tree, because I did nasty things to these trees, didn't I? I threw bait on them. I know I didn't do this one. So I will just hang my bow here very carefully. And things like otters, which I'm pretty much catching, solely just catching otters, and myself here, we're mainly unsold, but it depends what auction you look at too. Oh great, I snared myself really good here. I got caught coming out the door there. It's like I snared myself too good. Well, that's good, at least I know my snares work. Okay, I can't put it there. Where am I gonna put this? I'll put these, I'll take these a little bit further with me, I think. And then I'll, you know, do whatever. That's it, lose everything. Lose my arrow. I snared myself again. So things like otters, like if I'm only catching otters and then all of a sudden otters aren't worth anything, or people are just not interested in them, you know what I mean? Like it really, you're going to have to do your research to see what's going to pay. So right now, the only thing that's going to pay, but it's going to be a ton of work, is wolves and coyotes. There seems to be a good demand for that. The Canadian goose fur jackets or whatever, they're still using it. They're using the coyote trim around, you know, like a lot of winter jackets and stuff like that. So there's still a lot of demand for that, but they're a lot of work if you want to get max dollar for them. I'm in the region where wolves and coyotes get the least. You know, like they're like an Alaskan timber wolf is going to get a like prime dollar, right? Here again, our wolves are not as, they're not as soft, they're not as nice, they're a little more grouchy or whatever, so they don't get as much money. But that's okay, because you can still get on average 75 bucks and up, which, or yeah, 70 bucks and up or whatever on average, if you know it's a good pelt and whatever. So this also comes back to what I was talking about earlier, you know, when to trap. So all you guys that got all the stuff when it was easy, okay, it was less work, but now you're going to get $40 for a pelt that if you would have waited an extra 2 months to get, you might get $100 and some for, right? So $100 pelts are going to be very, very hard to get. Just going to put that in there for now. I got to go rescue my traps down there. That's going to be fun. And I'll be taking all this stuff off. And because I don't lose everything. So yeah, the fur prices, go check them out. Fur Harvester's Auction. For those of you guys who were using NAFA, there, you know, well, I guess it would be mainly the Americans using NAFA and the people out in Saskatchewan and stuff like that that were using NAFA, because they were pretty big. But again, they made a gamble on the mink. It sounds like they made a gamble on the mink farmers, and because the mink farmers lost so much money that they had to close the doors, right? And I think it just happened fairly recently, so some of you might not even be aware of that. So Furs Harvesters Auction, I don't work for them or anything like that, but that's who I send to. And they're still up and going, but even them, they've cut back one auction, meaning instead of having 3 auctions a year, they're only going to have 2. And that means, you know, that means the demand is really low. But there is a silver lining in this cloud. Hopefully we've hit the bottom year, because the furs really can't go much lower than they are now, or nobody's going to do it, right? And then that'll destroy it'll destroy the industry, so to speak. So the way some are looking at it, it can only be up from here. Now that said, prices have fluctuated. If you go back to 1920, you actually makes better prices. Like an otter could get you up to 350 bucks. Okay, how far does 350 bucks go in 1920? You tell me. I'm gonna have to fix up all my traps, and I got to rescue these guys, because this basically sank last night. The whole thing sank, and I gotta pull these 2 traps and figure out where I'm gonna put them next. Yeah, that's a lot of ice. So I know there's nothing in this one of this. Well, maybe there might be something in that one. I don't think so. I think the ice crushed it down. You can see how the ice kind of came down. My trap's probably so dug in the mud it wouldn't be able to set off anyway. Yeah, so that's not good. But that's trapping.